So, hello everybody, and welcome to Buying Real Estate with Friends, protecting your investment and your friendship with Coho BC, the Collaborative Home Ownership Initiative. I'm delighted to see a big, enthusiastic response to this important topic because, as you'll hear us talk about later, it's really a growing trend, and we want to make sure people are doing it smartly and safely. And we're here today to talk a little bit about what goes into doing that. What are the steps involved? What are the ways you can protect yourself? And what can you accomplish by buying real estate together? But before we go too deep in, it's important when talking about land ownership and land stewardship to acknowledge that BC is the ancestral, unceded, and ongoing homes of many different peoples across the province who have stewarded this land for generations, and we take our act as current and future stewards of this land very seriously. So, what is Coho BC? If you've not been to one of our events before, Coho BC is an initiative that works to promote co-ownership as a viable and valuable housing option across the province, to provide resources and professional support to assist groups going through the co-ownership process, to assist in the creation of co-ownership groups through a dating pool or a chance to meet other like-minded individuals to create buyer groups together, and we work to facilitate the sale or resale of shared property interests to other potential buyers. So basically, explain to people what co-ownership is and how it works, support people going through the process with friends or family members, and help those who want to find a partner to buy together or for property they already have to do so. And we are a collection of professionals, real estate agents, lawyers, builders, financial institutions, architects, mediators, matchmakers, all of us with an expertise and experience in collective housing and co-ownership. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to try to figure it out for yourself what the systems are going to be. You can use the experts. You can use the years of experience between us all to make sure you're being set up for success. So this is not a uniquely BC endeavor. Coho is part of a global movement. There are organizations in the US, in Eastern Canada, in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, all helping people do similar things, navigate the local housing and local laws to succeed at creating more community-minded, more affordable, and kind of just better housing solutions. Before we go too deep, I want to introduce myself and a couple other of the Coho pros who are here with us today as well. So my name is Noam Dolgan. I'm a realtor based out of Vancouver with a specialty in co-ownership, sustainable living, and green homes. I really just like to think real homes for real people and outside the box real estate thinking. So, trying to figure out how we can better utilize our housing stock, our housing options to create better housing at a lower price. And that's more sustainable for the planet and for our communities and for our pocketbook. So before getting into real estate, my background's in environmental education and community greening and community engagement and development. So I realized as I got into real estate, this is the number one choice we're all going to make socially, economically, of course, given the price of housing, and environmentally. And so that's how I come at real estate. And I co-own property with friends and with family. I also wanted to introduce Brian Horwitz, our Mid Island and Gulf Islands specialist. Brian, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm an active full-time real estate agent and co-ownership consultant based out of the Cowichan Valley, currently working up and down the island, including the Gulf Islands. I've got a lot of great supporting agents who support me in areas that are far away from my primary areas of expertise, and the systems are working really well in being able to navigate those types of files where people are looking in all different sorts of areas. Um, Community living is what brought me to Vancouver Island. It's been a big passion of mine before I became a real estate agent. Now I'm a realtor and really seeing the benefits to people coming together to share real estate. As we say many times, better housing for less. And it's wonderful to provide people the opportunity to live on properties that they may not be able to live on their own. So a pleasure being here tonight. I'm very passionate about green building technologies and progressive community projects. I work in multifamily, recreational, and residential. And that's basically me in a nutshell here. Thanks, Noel.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for all the work you do. And David Hale, our partner in Victoria and the founder of our partner group there, Shared Home Ownership Victoria.
Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. Yeah, I live in the Victoria area, been servicing this area as a realtor for about 30 years, and love the whole idea of shared home ownership or co-ownership, and very passionate about it. So been involved with Noam and Brian over the last few years to help people create affordable housing through co-ownership. So yeah, hopefully you will learn something tonight, and just it's one foot in front of the other kind of a thing. A lot of what we do is educate, and I think once you get the idea and understand that it's a way into the market, I always say it's a no-brainer. So happy to be with you tonight.
Thank you. And as we say about you, you're not just the president, you're also a client. You co-own your home with a friend, I understand?
That's right. 5 years ago now, Noam, we sold the upper two floors of our home to a nice young couple with a 2-year-old, and that 2-year-old is now 7. We had a little conversation with him. He came downstairs last night, and just amazing to see. He's a little human being now, and forms his own thoughts and speech, and pretty exciting to see all that happen. So yeah, it's been a good setup, and we've just extended our 5-year term now to another 3-year term. So everything is rolling along smoothly there. So yeah, it's all possible.
It's always good to point out that we don't just want to help people through this process. We really do believe in it and live it ourselves in many ways. So co-ownership. His co-ownership is not a new concept. People have been co-owning property, well, for millennium. But in the modern real estate system also has been going on for a while. Before 1966, there was no Strata Act in BC. So if you wanted to own pieces of a property, you had to do it either through an ownership co-op or through a corporation collectively. And so you see a lot of examples of that around the province, equity co-ops and land co-ops. And this is a picture here of a building in Vancouver, the Lee Building at Main and Broadway, that was co-owned. In the last 20 years, we've seen a big growth in co-housing, and we'll talk more about that. But co-housing as a movement to develop communities, 20 to 40 family communities built around collectivity and shared amenities. And those usually have a co-ownership phase in the development phase. But we've also seen a lot of historic examples of families buying together, friends buying together, and vacation properties bought together. This is not a new concept. In fact, the whole point of the Strata Act was to figure out ways to make co-ownership more effective. And so all strata, condos, duplexes, townhomes, etc., are co-owned to a certain degree. They just have a particular legal structure to do it. Properties that aren't stratified, but that still can be co-owned, you just have to create your own legal structure to underpin it. So why do people come to co-ownership? We see a lot of motivating factors, but the most common ones are to build community, to have that mutual support system, to know your neighbors, just to have that kind of better, more engaged, more socially progressive housing, more socially supportive, I should say, to save money, so to get, the housing you need at a lower price, or to get more for your money, get more housing, or get access to yard or acreage or resources you couldn't otherwise get on your own. And we also see people doing this to live in otherwise unavailable locations. So single family neighborhoods, rural lands, areas that are not historically stratified and divided up, but again, do allow for multiple dwellings on a property or multiple suites in the dwelling, or certainly multiple people living within a suite. So these are the major draws, but we'll get into more of them as we go on. Who do we see co-owning? Really, this is happening across the board at different phases in life for different reasons. Again, we see families co-owning together. We see individuals coming together, both as kind of single friends in their 20s and 30s, looking to get into the market. We see single people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who, as many of their friends are maybe partnering up and familying up, they're realizing they don't want that, but they do want the community and the density and the support that goes along with a traditional family. So they're teaming up, and then we see single folks, downsizers, and seniors who want that kind of that kind of support later in life coming together. We see families coming together, a lot of young families, just because the price for housing on a lot of fronts is for a 3-bedroom type space that families would want is really expensive, and because they can really need that support, the ability to share some of the childcare, to be able to call on each other if someone needs to be out and to watch after the kids, to share yard space and toys, things that really are really, it's a tough stage in life, and the more support you can get, the better. So we see a lot of young families coming together, and we also see investors who co-own with their friends because it's a way to help their friends into the market or family, and to kind of get a piece of real estate investing without all the work and risk associated with buying a rental condo or something like that. So we see this happening, working for a lot of people at different stages in their life for different reasons. But really, anyone who can think collaboratively and outside the box can probably see how co-ownership can get them better housing for less money in their region. So what co-ownership looks like is really up to you. Do you want to live communally, a shared house, shared kitchen, shared living room, etc.? Or what most of the people we work with do is co-ownership of shared property, but that property that has multiple suites or multiple houses on on the property. So mimics like a strata development, either through everyone has their own kitchen and living room, so you're not fully collective, but you can have the level of community you want. You can have some collective spaces, both indoor or out, etc. We also see land-based businesses using co-ownership, so rental properties certainly, but also farms and agribusiness. And I've talked about investing in friends. And so, what co-ownership looks like is really up to you. How much do you share is up to you. It's going to be based on your needs, your budget, the housing stock in your neighborhood, and your partner, and figuring out the jigsaw puzzle that makes sense. So, do you want shared land and ownership, but everyone has their private space? That's the most common. Or do you really want that added level of community and added level of affordability that comes through a collective home with shared kitchens, bathrooms, living space? How about other spaces? Are you going to have shared yards, sheds, garage, laundry, play space, gardens, etc.? What are you going to share in the way of resources? Will you choose to share tools, cars, maybe a hot tub and other kind of luxury stuff that you couldn't afford on your own? Socially, are you going to have collective meals and celebrations? What mutual supports do you want to have? Shared shopping, babysitting, carpooling. All these things are elements that you could choose to include or choose not to include. And it's just a question of making sure you have the conversations in advance with your partners so that everyone's on the same wavelength about how much community, what's collective, what's not collective, what are the expectations. And as long as you all go in with the right expectations, and ideally can properly document that, then you can have a really successful setup. But you do want to make sure you know what you want and you've conveyed that to any potential partner. So co-ownership is becoming more and more popular every year. And the most recent surveys put this as an idea that at least 50% of Canadians, and particularly when it surveys of Canadian property owners see co-ownership as one of their only pathways and one of their best pathways into the real estate market. So that number is higher in the younger generations, where almost 70% of Canadians 18 to 34 are open to co-ownership. But even in the older generations, we have 34% of Canadians 55 plus open to co-ownership. Really, it's I said, at any stage in life, there's really advantages to it, and people are starting to realize that um, this could work, and could do what they can't do on their own. So as I said, going into this process, you want to give a lot of thought about what you're looking for in a home, what you're looking for in a partner. You want to ask yourself some basic questions, like, what is my timeline? How long do I see this in? How long do I see myself in this property? Is this my forever home, or is this a 5-year plan? If you're someone just looking to build some equity, at a certain stage in life, and 5 years from now, you see yourself moving across the country, and you should make sure you know that, and your partner knows that, because if they're buying a property that they see themselves in for the next 30 years, maybe you're not the right partner, or maybe you are. You just have to have the proper exit strategies and plans in place. How much communal living do you want, right? Are you comfortable with shared living spaces, or do you need your own private unit? What resource spaces are you looking to share? And what kind of partner do you need? And what kind of partner are you? Right? So what do you bring to the table skill wise? What do you want from a partner to bring to the table skill wise? But also things around demographics. Do you want someone who's similar age to you socially, or has kids similar age to you? Or do you want someone who's very different because maybe they're more able to support you in this stage in life? If you're older and you want a younger person to take care of the land or to take care of you when needed, if you have kids and you want someone who can be there to babysit, etc. And in terms of the housing needs, what kind of partner do you want from a housing perspective? And this will come down to looking at the housing stock choices in your region, but you need someone who's going to match the housing stock, so you and them together can find housing that actually works for your needs. So there's a lot of considerations that go in advance, and this is why we say it's a process. A process about identifying what you want in housing, identifying what potential partners want in housing, identifying what housing exists at what price point, and putting together that jigsaw that is finding the right partner, and then building the right net to support that. So a lot of times it comes down to housing. So we'll start with some examples of housing types that are fairly common in the BC market that really are well designed for co-ownership. So right here we see the Vancouver Special, or an unstratified duplex. The picture on the left is the Vancouver Special. The picture on the right is a duplex, 2 houses side by side. These basically have oftentimes two full, fairly equal living spaces, and can be good for 2 couples or 2 families to buy in together. And the numbers I have here are approximations of East Vancouver, but of course these numbers shift based on the region of the province that you're in. But hopefully the overarching idea that you can see you can do more through co-ownership generally translates. So in East Vancouver, if you were to get a 1,300 square foot half duplex, the prices start at about 1.4 million. Whereas these Vancouver Specials, or a side-by-side duplex that was around 2,600 square feet, would sell for around 2 million or $1 million each. So they're effectively the same housing type. They're just not stratified, and so that comes with some of the complications we'll talk about later around co-ownership. But they can save you a lot of money, and you still get that single family feel in a single family neighborhood with the yard and that 3-bedroom space or whatever it is that you need. So those are some of the more obvious ones. If you were to take a single family home and convert it into 3 or more suites, so there's a lot of these historic buildings that were converted for rental suites or other intergenerational families over the years. Instead of buying a 2-bedroom condo at around $700,000, you could buy a 4-suite home, and that same 2-bedroom, 850 square foot space would cost you about $550,000. And again, now you're not in a strata building with a bunch of strangers, controlled by by the rules and governance of that community. You know your neighbors. You get to decide on how and what you want in your community. Maybe more direct access to yard space, etc. Um, Multiple homes on a single property is also another great example. So instead of buying an entry level single family home at around 1.7 million, that probably you can't afford anyways, you can put a laneway house on the back of that, and buy it for around 2.1 million. And so now that is the second line down below. So now it's a 1.4 million for the person who gets the main house instead of 1.7. And the laneway house is a unique product, doesn't exist, right? A standalone small house, direct access to the yard, no shared neighbors, uh, usually new or newer. Really a great product option for a single person or a couple, and at the same price as a two-bedroom condo, but you're getting superior housing. You can also team up on a new construction and with a garden suite. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities that exist. If you're not in the city, you see a lot of rural acreage that has multiple houses on the acreage. So, for example, instead of paying 1.2 million, for example, in for a 5 acre lot, you could get a 5 acre lot with two houses on it and split that up as 900,000 and 500,000, or depending on how the units break up. If they're similar sizes, 600,000 a piece, 700,000 a piece. And now there's no way at a price point of 500,000 or 700,000 you're getting access to 5 acres in most parts of BC, or certainly down on this coast. But you can by teaming up, and you can share access to that acreage and have that quality of life. Um, Talk about collective living being oftentimes the most affordable, not surprising, because you're sharing living rooms and dining rooms and kitchens and whatever. So instead of getting a 600 square foot one bedroom at around $500,000, you can share a condo with somebody at 350 a piece, a townhouse at around 367, or a house at 450, 500. All of these getting you, I mean, a house of 100,000 versus a condo of 100,000, you now have media rooms and home office space and garage storage and large living rooms and a whole community, right? So you can really get access to a lot more through that shared model. And we're also seeing people coming together and creating tiny home communities on land, and that certainly can lower your entry point to just like $100,000-$300,000 to get housing and access to 10, 20, 50 acres through coming together collectively. So a lot of advantages, right? Knowing your neighbors, community support, saving money, getting more space, sharing resources, higher quality of housing, housing otherwise not available. If you already own your land and you're bringing a partner onto your land, gaining access to your equity without having to move or pay reverse mortgage fees. There's financial synergies that can happen when people come together. And in general, I like to think of this as a triple bottom line sustainable choice, right? Socially, fiscally, and environmentally, a better pathway for most people. Now, there are challenges. If there weren't challenges, they wouldn't have bothered creating the Strata Act, and everyone would be doing this left, right, and center, right? The challenges generally come around financing and mortgage. Everyone needs to be on a mortgage together. Exit strategy, what to do when someone wants to sell, or if someone dies, there's divorce, etc. Delinquency, what to do if somebody stops paying the bills or stops doing their responsibility, and ongoing disagreements, about repair and maintenance or noise or other factors. And so you do have to consider for these things. And I'll talk a little bit about each of them going forward. And that's why it's really important to have a well thought through process where you're talking about all the stuff in advance, and a very strong partnership agreement, a legal document that kind of will dictate decisions you will have made in advance, decisions you have had in advance. When things are good and everyone's getting along and everyone's optimistic and idealistic, that's the time you want to have those debates. not at a time when someone has just died or someone's just lost their job or you're going through a divorce or there's a fight, the relationship has soured. That is not when you want to start negotiating out your exit and your timelines. You want to have those conversations done now, done well, documented so that if those moments come, you can say, all right, what did we agree to? And then point to the legal document. The legal document can protect you in court, but the goal here is to never end up in court. If you've got a document like that that outlines what's going on, you don't have to end up in court. You go right to that and say, all right, here's I can't afford the bills. What's the plan going forward? I need to sell. What's the plan going forward? I need to take out some financing, some more mortgage on the property. What's the plan? How do we accommodate that, etc. So really important that you get into that legal document, and we'll go into that in a moment. But to some of those particular challenges, right? I mean, the reality is in Canada, for financing a co-owned property, that all owners must be on the mortgage and could each be held responsible for the full amount if there's a problem. And that's just reality. So there are some ways to protect yourself against that, and we help groups kind of figure out the best systems for themselves. First off, not everyone has to go on title, although that is, if someone doesn't need a mortgage, they maybe don't go on title, but that has its own risks associated with not being on title, although there are ways to protect from that. But in general, we have delinquency clauses we put into the contract that specify, well, I'll talk about them in a moment. And people are protected by your down payment, by your legal agreement, by the underlying value in the land, so that if you have a delinquency clause that says if somebody is more than $5,000 delinquent, here's what happens X, Y, and Z. Well, as long as they have $50,000 of equity and protections in the property, and a pathway to force them out or force a sale, then you're okay. They won't have to take you down. And good groups will also build up contingency funds. So whether it be for future repairs or for something like this, saving up some money so that if someone is in financial trouble, the collective can carry them for a while, instead of you having to carry them, the partner carrying them. Co-financing can also open up opportunities. So we see groups sometimes come together where one person has a lot of down payment but doesn't really qualify for a mortgage. The other person qualifies for a mortgage but doesn't have a good down payment. And neither of them could buy on their own, but together they actually can qualify and purchase. So that can really open up some possibilities. And some of the banks, particularly the credit unions like Vancity, are starting to see co-ownership growing so much they've created specialty products like the mixer mortgage. And the Vancity mixer mortgage does not actually alleviate the fact that you're both on for one mortgage, both responsible for each other, but it does do some really great accounting where one party can have a 25-year amortization and a fixed rate, and the other party can have a 30-year amortization and a variable rate, and one party can prepay the mortgage faster and build up more equity, and it's all accounted for separately. And when one party wants to sell, they can take out their share of the equity in the property without disturbing the other person. So there really are some great products coming to help with the financing. Okay, it looks like I'm missing the delinquency slide. But basically, we have the clause in the contract, in your legal agreement, helping to develop that talk again about if somebody is short on money, you'll carry them for a short period of time, or the collective will. You'll maybe charge them interest on that money, and then if they hit a certain period of time or a certain maximum amount, it triggers the delinquency clause, which would force you to either to sell off their share to a new partner, or to force a sale in the property as a whole to reclaim that money, or you can still choose to carry them for a longer period of time. We also often, groups will put in punitive penalties in there. So if you're delinquent, certainly all the costs associated with the sale, the commissions and the taxes and things like that would be on you. And other folks will put in like really direct punitive. If you go delinquent and force me to sell off your share, I'm going to charge a $50,000 punitive penalty. So if you set a delinquency rate at like $5,000 and someone knows that it's going to cost them, $25,000 in penalties and $25,000 in commissions, So $50,000, they're going to do everything humanly possible to ever avoid coming near that finance, that foreclosure place, right? Being delinquent. They'll get friends or family to support them, whatever it takes. So these are the protections, and that's one of the reasons why we also encourage folks to co-own, with 10, 20% down, not necessarily to do it with 5% down or less. And you can do less if one party has a lot and one party has very little, because you want everyone to have enough protections that it doesn't make economic sense for them to stop paying the bills. And that's what protects you in the process. Exit strategy. Everyone wants, well, what if I want to sell? What if I need to sell? And so when one party wants to sell, it begins an exit process. That's generally 3 stages. The first stage is the first right of refusal, or the remaining partner has the right to buy out the leaving partner, and your legal agreement will have a mechanism for how the value of that is created. If they can't or don't want to buy you out, both parties work together to find a third party to replace the leaving partner. And you say both parties because you really do need both parties. The departing party has to come to terms on money and dates and things with a new partner, but the remaining party has to come to terms with the new partner on being a good partner, getting to know them, thinking they'd be a good fit for the house, making sure the new partner signs on to the legal agreement, etc. So really both parties have to work together to find that third party. And then if you can't do one or two after an appropriate length of time, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, something you guys agree to in advance, if you cannot find a pathway for one party to stay while the other one to leave, then you both agree to sell the property as a whole. And you say, this has been a great situation for 7 years, 10 years, 20 years. This worked really well. But now it doesn't work for both of us anymore. So we're going to separate, sell the property, take our equity, and move elsewhere. Now, most groups, you don't want someone to come in and change their mind a year later and then force a sale right away. Like, that can be really hard emotionally, really hard economically. So most groups will put in a 3 to 5 year no forced sale lockout period before you can start to trigger this. Or as David was saying with his partnership, right? They made a 5 year commitment originally, and then they've recently come back together and made a new 3 year commitment to the project. And so, those are ways of making sure that everyone's on the same wavelength and you're still in this together, and no one's gonna, upset anyone else's apple cart too quickly into the process. So what goes into this co-ownership agreement? Lots of stuff. And that's why, again, working with the COA-BC lawyers who do this regularly, and working with the COA-BC realtors and other pros who can kind of help you have these conversations in advance before you get to the lawyers. Because A, you want to have them before you start shopping, right? You want to make sure you are the right fit. And B, if you can have a lot of the questions planned in advance, you can save a lot of time and money with the lawyers at that stage. So what goes into these agreements? Financing. So what's everyone's contribution on initially and ongoing? What's your form of ownership? Are you tenants in common, which is most common between friends, or joint tenants, which is more common in couples? Are you going to create a co-op or a corporate structure? What percentage does each person own, right? That might be directly related to the initial contributions, or it might be directly to the ongoing contributions, right? Similarly to, bigger mortgage, less down, right? So what percentage does everyone own and what they're responsible for, those go together. What's the purpose and vision? So if there's any rental income, how will that be allocated? If it's more of an intentional community, what's the side there? Property management, how will property be managed? Who will manage it? Who will do what? What are our respective roles and responsibilities? What are the shared resources and expenses? How are we going to allocate expenses? Is it based on ownership stake? Is it based on occupancy stake? Is it based on number of inhabitants in your space? What spaces are collective? What spaces are private? What rules and visions will guide the partnership as a whole? Do you want to have quiet hours? Do you want to have, smoking sections? We see rural settings where, are you allowed to raise and slaughter animals on site? All sorts of questions unique to your situation will go into the rules discussion. Delinquency, I've talked about a bunch already, right? What do you do if someone stops following through? How are decisions made? If it's a small group, it'll usually be consensus based. But if it starts to get a larger group, are you going to have a supermajority? What happens if you can't agree? Are you, or there's conflict? Will you involve an outside mediator or arbitrator? What are the exit strategies when it's time to sell your interest? All sorts of things. And then there's stuff that's specific to a property. So if you're living in unauthorized accommodations, what's the plan? If there's ever a problem and the municipality comes along, how are you going to respond to that, etc. So really, there's both a lot of general stuff and a lot of very specific stuff to your situation that would go into your co-ownership agreement. And as you can see, a lot of this stuff would make sense to talk about well in advance of going and buying a property. So by working with David, Brian, and myself, we can help you frame those questions early on, find the property that suits your needs, and then connect you to the lawyers to actualize that into a legal agreement and to just review your particulars of your situation and think about whether there's anything specifically unique. Other stuff that's not I didn't talk about here is things like insurance, right, to protect against delinquency. Are you going to, requirement of insurance? Are you going to allow rentals in the space? Are you going to allow short-term rentals in the space? All sorts of stuff. There's a lot that goes into this, and that's why we say, hey, work with the professionals, and a deliberate, thoughtful, slow process is key to success. Because if you can address all this stuff in advance, this is where the protecting your friendship and your investment comes in, right? This is what will protect your investment because you've got these financial protections, and this is what will protect your friendships. You have these social protections. The decisions have been made in advance. You don't have to fight over them at the time. When somebody wants out, here's the system. When someone stops paying, here's the system. If there's, if we can't decide who should doing what, here's the system. And those sort of things will definitely protect the friendship, and will protect your assets. So in general, the process to find the right property, we talk a lot about this as a marriage, right? The whole co-ownership is a marriage. It's a marriage where, it may not be till death do you part, but it's certainly an extended commitment to interweave your life socially, economically, your home with another person or persons. And so you have to go into it like you would into trying to find a successful marriage. So the first stage is dating, where you do both home dating and partner dating. The home dating is working with one of the co-ownership professionals to look at the types of housing stock that are available in your area, to figure out the price points, and to see what is a pathway that could be realistic for yourself in your region. And then partner dating, right? Talking to people about your housing needs and their housing needs, your vision for community, your quirks, your must-haves and your deal breakers, and see if you can find people who both fit you socially and your vision for the property, and also fit the housing needs that complementary to yours that are available in the market. And you'll discover if you just start getting yourself excited about this and talking about it in your social world, you'll discover that almost everyone you know has also been thinking about this and talking about it, right? So the moment you say, oh, we're looking at, maybe co-buying with friends, I was like, oh, I haven't talked about that, and we've thought about that, and you can really kind of find the right partner for you. Either make sure the person you're looking at doing this with is the right partner through all this conversation, or find the right partner going forward. Once you've found the right housing type and the right partner, you can do the engagement phase, which is really to discuss your real truth of who you are. What are your finances? And you get collectively pre-approved. What are your quirks? What are your needs? What are your long-term plans? How long do you see yourself on the property? What's your professional situation? Are you stable here, or could you be transferred somewhere in the long run? What's your health situation? To make sure you have that. And then you will draft the co-ownership agreement overview. So you can start to talk about what it is you want in your agreement. And you can start with the Coho Pro Realtor and then start connecting to the lawyer to help figure out that vision. And then concurrently, while you're creating a co-ownership vision, you're creating your housing vision, right? You're finally narrowing down on the housing type, budget, your timeline, what it is that you need to make this work. So, and then you go and you get married. You find the right house. You put in an offer. You finalize your co-ownership agreement between partners. You finalize your financing. You buy the house, and like a good marriage, you sign the prenup in this case, partnership agreement, without there being all sorts of emotional complications around a prenup, because you're just willing to say we need this. This is an important document up front, and then you throw a great housewarming party, and don't forget to invite us. So a few other versions of co-ownership that can work for friends. One is co-development, where people buy land together and then build a multiplex or a duplex on that land or some sort of larger co-housing or farm community. And those final products might be stratified, like in a duplex or in a co-housing community. So co-ownership becomes a stage that you acquire the land and you build it out on. And then in the end, once it's stratified, you can then each own your own section, and it's a great way to have a product that at the end can be financed separately and can be sold separately, but to again know your neighbors and hopefully save some money or build exactly your dream home, etc. So that's something we're seeing more and more friends doing together, and especially with the current zoning allowing 4 to 6 units on single family neighborhoods in many of our urban centers. That creates an opportunity for groups, 3 or 4 friends to come together and build something out. And then again, each own it separately in the end under strata, but create it together through co-ownership. I've mentioned co-investment, right? So putting money into each other's property to help people have the down payment that they need, and then be able to own some real estate without having to worry about risk. You have the best tenant ever because they're a co-owner with you. They're going to take care of all the bills. They're going to take care of any emergencies. It's you really get to be a silent investor. We see co-owned social enterprises, so cooperative farms and vineyards and distilleries, rental units and other things like that. So you can, co-own the land or co-own the business. There's a lot of endeavors there. But again, there's a lot to think about and a lot of process to go through before you get too deep into it. And that's why Coho BC exists. That's why we're always looking for professionals with experience in this to kind of to lead people to make sure that you are set up for success and doing everything one step at a time and with a nice net underneath you forever. So we had some people lined up to come speak to us today, but unfortunately they had sick kids at home and had to cancel. A couple co-owners who bought together. But what I do have is a short video from a previous presentation where 2 different groups, Vic and Claire, who bought a side-by-side duplex with another couple, and Christian and Noriko, which is a family with a friend living collectively. So these are 2 folks living in 2 different versions of co-buying with friends. And I'm gonna play the video from this previous session. Unfortunately, they're not here to answer questions when we get to the whole, feel free to ask questions thing. We can't do that. But then we will take questions and comments after this that David, myself, and Brian would be happy to talk about. So let's hear a little bit from a couple of the co-owners. Sorry, these folks couldn't be here today. Groups of friends who bought together last year, who are here to talk a little bit about their experiences and buying together and now owning together. Sorry, let me just change. So, okay, so thank you, Laura and Emily, Vicky.
Noam, I think the audio might be off on your end.
To stop the you guys not hear it? See you guys and Brian, do you not hear it?
Do not hear it.
Oh,
but when you're not muted, we do hear it.
Oh, okay. Change the security settings so that you can actually unmute yourself and start your video. and then we'd love to hear from you a little bit, just for a few minutes, about why you chose to buy with friends versus buying on your own, what advantages you've seen from owning with a friend or going through the buying process with a friend, what advantages you've experienced, any challenges you've faced, again, either in the buying process or now living together, and maybe a little bit about how buying with Coho BC, working with an agent who works with Coho BC, helped you navigate this that you feel like you might not have been able to do on your own. So again, thank you, Laura, Emily, Vic, Claire, Christian, and Enrico, or whoever, which ones of you are here today. If why don't we start with Laura and Emily? Just because I can, if they're with us. There's too many names here to find. I see an Emily. Okay. Fantastic. There's Vic and Claire. Emily, are you with us and able to unmute? Or should we start?
Sorry about this. We're going to get right into it right
Wow.
now. We'll start hearing from Vic and Claire right now.
All right. Well, we'll figure that out. Why don't we start with Vic and Claire, because I see you guys right there on my screen. And to everyone else, there will be definitely have time after people speak to ask some questions about their experience. And of course, to ask myself, Brian, and David about some of the professional sides of it. So we'll all be here for a question and answer session. So please stick with us. So yeah, Vic and Claire, thank you for being here. Please tell us a little bit about what you guys did, why you did it, the advantages, the challenges, and how it's all worked for you.
Thanks, Noam. Good to see you again. I'm Vic, this is Claire.
Hi.
We live in a side-by-side duplex with some really good friends in East Van, and we bought this place together a year ago.
Yeah, a little over a year ago.
December of last year. I wrote down a couple of notes from the questions Noam sent us. Do you want me to kick it off?
Okay. I think it's pretty similar to what Noam's already covered, but there were a lot of reasons that co-ownership made sense for us. I think the first one is co-ownership does make owning a house more financially accessible. And we all think about the upfront costs, but then the ongoing carrying costs are also more accessible. You need to get a new roof for your house, you only have to pay for half of it. You need to get some renos done, you want to set up a garden, like it's all just more affordable to do it with more people, which is really nice. And then there's just an intentionality to community that really resonated with us. We wanted to live next to our friends. We wanted to not just co-own, but co-live with people. And so it's really nice to, live next door to really good friends who we see a lot of.
Other things is this is all four of our first times owning a home. And so we think having 4 adults is probably the right number of people to remember to do many things, such as paying things on time and remembering to, do all of the day-to-day things of co-ownership, of home ownership. We, like Claire said, we see our friends 3 to 4 times a week. We walk their dog. We, mow each other's lawn. We did all sorts of things like that. That really was how we envisioned homeownership anyway. And so it's nice that was actually doable. In terms of challenges, we really do have to negotiate everything, not just between ourselves, but now between 2 other adults that might have their own priorities and their own timelines. It really helped to have kind of started off on similar, with all of these conversations prior to even approaching Coho and having started off with similar values in terms of what we were looking for. Other challenges was that, you might not be on the same timeline or budget, like timeline or budget in terms of timeline. So, we might want to put in more money up front for certain things, but your neighbors and co-owners might want to delay that for a couple of years for other reasons. And so really we're having a lot of those types of conversations. And then financially, the other thing that was quite nice was that we were able to So Claire and I own 55% of the property, but live in 50% of it. And that was, through a lot of conversations about what financial means we had as a group, and individually. And then I'm talk about
Sure.
Coho.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the other challenge that I'll just throw in there too is there is a lot of vulnerability because you kind of have to expose all your finances and all your values to someone. So yeah, there is just like a lot of trust and vulnerability that exists, which can be both a joy and a challenge, depending on who you're doing it with. And then yeah, the advantages for us of working with Coho BC. It was helpful. Noam and Joanne knew what resources were available and shared a lot of good resources in terms of like guiding some of the discussions that we had. They understood the mortgage structure. We didn't have to approach someone and be like, hey, we want to do this thing and then have to explain it. They helped and explained a lot of things to us too, which was really useful. And yeah, there's just like really good templates, really good guidance for those conversations. They kind of already have their fingers on the pulse of which houses, like using them as realtors. They already knew kind of which houses might be good fits and could talk us through some of the pros and cons of different properties, which was nice. And yeah, they had connections with like mortgage brokers and lawyers to navigate co-ownership agreements, which was also helpful. So we like co-owning. It's pretty fun.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. If people have questions for them, we'll come back to questions after we've heard from all three of our speakers. I will just say, you're talking about having the eye on the pulse of the housing. Every once in a while, there's a house that you see that you're like, this needs to be co-owned. And you start going through all your networks to be like, who's going to be the one to get this house? It is ideal for it. And sometimes it's heartbreaking because people aren't, or their timing's not right, or the budget's not right, and you can't put people in place. But every once in a while, the right person comes along and you're able to create it. And Vic and Claire's was one of those, a house that I've been watching for a while and saying this needs the right buyer, and I kept picking people out to, and then finally we found the right group of friends to come along and pick it up, and I'm delighted to see that you guys are succeeding in that home because it was clearly meant for people like you. Okay, I see Christian and Noriko and a little one running behind. So I will ask you guys to speak next. And Laura and Emily, if you guys are here, are able to unmute yourself and share your video so you can come up next. Please, Christian and Noriko, introduce yourself, tell us your story, and tell us a bit about, the opportunities, the challenges, what brought you here, and how it all played out.
A lot of things, yeah. So I guess I'm Christian. This is
Noriko. Yeah.
Not shown are 3 kids and my wife. One of the kids is getting picked up from Girl Guides. The other 2 are just eating on the other side of the table here. And I guess we lived together as housemates already. So
and before that, we know each other for quite a few years.
Like, I don't know, 10, 15 years or something.
Yeah.
We've been good friends for a long time. And Nina, my partner, and I had been renting like sort of a larger house and like had various housemates. And then eventually, brought in Noriko as a housemate, and then we were living there quite happily for quite some time until, I don't know, 2 or 3 years or something like that. And then we got kicked out. The landlord gave us they said they're moving in, but then they didn't move in, but we got our year's rent. So I guess all's fair. So then, we were getting kicked out, and then it's like, well, are we going to go and rent another place together? Or are we going to go our separate ways? Or are we going to buy a house together? And so then we decided that we would like to keep living together because, we like having each other around. And so that's I guess why we decided to live to purchase together. And I guess the advantage of that is that we do still enjoy each other's company.
So yeah, this is very important for us because we share actually living room, kitchen. So it's not duplex. We are sharing one single townhouse. So we have separate bedrooms, but the bathroom and kitchen and basement, garage, these are shared living spaces.
Yeah.
So we know each other as a roommate. We know the level of, tidiness or how to communicate nicely. So that really helps to go through all the process. So obviously it's important to have that day-to-day operation, but there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of financial, things and what to do, contingency plan, and then some legal document to go through. So having that kind of trust and then good basis for communication. That's without that, I don't think I could ever do the co-housing. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to live together,
Yeah.
I think it would be very worthwhile to live together first before you own a house, because the
exactly.
level of commitment is a lot less.
Yeah.
One thing we did at some point with our other prior housemates, at some point we did have another housemate with kids. And that, I think I would not do that again. I think when it comes to having kids and adults and other families with other, you can talk to another adult about all sorts of things and, maybe come to some sort of agreement. But if you want to talk about how like kids are being raised, like that, it might as well be religion, right? So I think if you have kids, and you might initially think that like, oh, another family with kids would be great, and the kids it'll just be like one big happy family. But
if it's a duplex and then not really sharing the actual core of the like a living space, two family with the kids would work.
that'd be great, maybe.
But
yeah.
in the same household, one roof, same kitchen, then that it can be really tricky.
Yeah, it was really tricky with the other people with kids living together as renters. So yeah.
All those financial and then the space advantages, this
they're real.
Yeah, it's real. And then also this is the first time home buying for us as well. So someone to talk to go through the steps, or finding lawyer or try to find the mortgage that's right for us. Having someone to talk to is really helpful for me because I'm a single. So if I were looking for a place just for myself, I needed to do it all by myself. But with the good trusting partners, that was really helpful as well.
Yeah, like having the Coho BC affiliated person, it was useful to have sort of access to resources. Their template for the legal agreement was where we started.
Yeah.
That was good. Their list of lawyers was good. We sent messages to a wide variety of lawyers in terms of looking over our agreement, and actually only people who were already on the list that we got even returned our message. So yeah, it's you might think that like lawyers are flexible and looking for work, but I think that maybe there's enough work out there for them that they only really do what they want to do. I think for mortgage, we tried mortgage brokers, and at the end we went with Vancity, which was our existing bank, because they can do the mixer mortgage thing, which was very, very nice for us. So we each have our own terms, but obviously everybody is ultimately responsible for the whole thing. And in the end, in terms of just the numbers, like the rates, actually Vancity's rates were better than what the mortgage broker came up with anyway. So I don't know who they were talking to. They didn't talk to Vancity, but
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
Very positive experience for us.
yeah, it's been good.
Thank you. I'm glad the home. How long have you been in your home now?
We moved in the early summer, late spring.
Like end of June,
Yeah.
like last week of June, we moved in.
Okay, so I'm sorry that it had to be a video of a past participant instead of someone live that we could ask questions of. But I hope that gave you a sense for two different types of groups, one looking to live side by side and one looking to live collectively, and kind of what motivated them and what were some of the things they've learned through the process. So now for us here today, I'm going to stop the share for a little bit and loosen up the security settings here so people can unmute themselves and start their video and see if we have any questions about co-ownership broadly, about co-owning with friends in particular, about Victoria for David, about the Restmaker Island for Brian, or rural settings. So yeah, we'll open the floor to you guys. And then at the end, we'll close up with just a little bit about what's going on in the Coho world and how you can get connected and how to reach us. But for now, if anyone wants to just unmute themselves or stick up their hand, be happy to answer your questions. Yes, Rod, please unmute yourself and ask away.
Yes, hi, good evening. Thank you for the workshop. I'm thinking of buying a piece of land with approximately 10 other people and some children, and we want to live inclusively. And it's in the Nanaimo district, and I am concerned about the zoning because the land is zoned residential, but it is in a forest, and it's 15 acres, and it's quite far outside of Nanaimo. But the concern is that Nanaimo has been pretty hard on people living in RVs and tiny homes, but they're making some changes in that. So, because they're very aware of the housing crisis for people and making it more affordable. So, I'm just wondering if you have any information on what might be going on at Nanaimo right now, or is it too early to know?
Brian, you want to handle that?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Rod. Yeah, I work up in that area, and I've actually done some co-ownership deals in the Nanaimo core and surrounding area. And further to the surrounding area, um, there's a lot of people doing things on their own, um, and the not according to zoning. So the Regional District of Nanaimo is looking ahead to authorizing tiny homes eventually, but it doesn't mean people can just automatically roll out a tiny home community. People are still going to be bound to the current zoning designation in place, whether it's a tiny home, cabin, single family dwelling. It's not going to change much. What I have done in the past and continue to do for those who want to live in neighborhoods on Vancouver Island where certain communities and on the Gulf Islands where certain communities have a lot of unauthorized housing on site, where the occupants live sustainably, responsibly, have access to clean drinking water, and manage their waste, are doing so in an unauthorized manner, very successfully. It really comes down to how you handle yourself when the authorities come onto your land and know how to answer questions when they do come onto your land. Do I advise clients to do things unauthorized? No. However, do I help clients who who are comfortable working in the unauthorized space, collaborate under that umbrella? Absolutely. And what we focus on is the backup plan, what to do in that worst case scenario situation. So that is how to do something like what you're talking about in our current space here on Vancouver Island. And we're not in the Kootenays where there are some sites that have no zoning, where you can build out with no density issues. Um, if there's on reserve lands, there's a lot more flexibility to roll out tiny home villages on reserve lands because they're not bound to the zoning designations that our municipalities are. And to me, I see great potential in that regard. However, there's a lot of considerations to involve. So I'd be happy to chat with you about specific areas and if there's a subject property to give you my 2 cents of what I know about the area and let you know what I think, my thoughts are on your particular endeavor and that property if you'd like. So I can reach out to you. Yeah, I believe we have your email from registering and follow up with you if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you bet.
And it's not just an issue for 10-person rural communities. The unauthorized nature of many of the secondary suites in housing or many of the secondary homes on properties is something across the province. And fortunately, at this point, unlike a decade ago, most regions have a kind of, as long as it's safe, we'll look the other way policy and are not shutting down those spaces. But yeah, even if it's a Vancouver special built in the 70s or 80s that has 2 suites in it and has had 2 suites in it for 40 years, oftentimes they're not authorized. And so, as Brian said, it's about future proofing the plan. So if there is an issue and someone comes along, how do we deal with it? What's the system in place to facilitate an exit at that time, or to get the building up to code so that they are authorized, etc. So just dealing with the realities of the housing, and if it's the house you want, planning a legal agreement that is specific to the situation. Situation is sometimes about you, sometimes about your partner, sometimes about the legal environment, but often also about the particular property and its quirks and pros and cons.
Yeah, and also being creative in your building. If you're building a new design, there's interesting ways of building one structure that can accommodate multiple parties, providing a lot of privacy with unique design, and as well knowing what to say when the authorities come onto your property, which is a big one from a lot of people I know in the area who are very privy to know what to say, who operate in that manner and continue to do so in that regard.
Okay, Ivy, we see your hand patiently up. Please, what's your question or comment?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I'm just going through all of this and definitely thinking that my group needs to figure out the next steps of our agreements. I've been living together with a bunch of folks. We're in our 8th year of living together at this point. We've been renting the whole time, and we're looking to buy. But we actually did go to Vancity to try to sort things out with the Mixer mortgage, and we were really disappointed. About half of the house has, a better income job, so pretty established and such. And myself and another roommate we're both on disability. And so we really don't make a lot of money. And we really felt like, I don't know, like we weren't being taken seriously at our appointment. They only had one person assigned to the Mixer mortgage who wasn't even there the day that we came in. So we had to talk about it over a call. And yeah, I think we came in another time, and it was just, I don't know, definitely not what we were looking for. So I think we're gonna shop around for maybe different people to work with, like you were saying in the dating section. But I was just wondering if you had any ideas for situations where income is like drastically different between some of the people, and how to maybe just navigate some of that prejudice, I guess, for lower income folks.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry about that experience, and that sounds upsetting and problematic. We certainly can try to connect you to other brokers, folks we know who we think understand the vision and can do it. Can also connect you to kind of the head Mixer mortgage guy at Vancity if you were dealing with someone at the branch.
That's what I was going to
oftentimes,
say, Noam, and sorry to jump in, Avi, but sometimes it's not the institution. You know, all credit unions across the province can handle these types of mortgages, but they don't know how. So when you just call Van City, you get connected to someone, and they don't really understand the product. Whereas our go-to guy, Ryan McKinley, he understands the product, works with our clients, and continues to generate success, who wouldn't have any prejudice or biased opinions. So that's what I'm realizing. It's not just about the institution, it's knowing who to connect to within that institution.
and different institutions will have different ways that they treat different levels of income. So it's possible that Van City in the end isn't the best choice. And so that's where, if they can't do it for you, going to a broker who can get into a more traditional mortgage might be a better fit. There are also, again, tricks where potentially some of you may not be on title as an owner, but as maybe a charge holder or something of that nature, so that you don't have to complicate the application process. I mean, in general, low income people combined with higher income people is fine as long as the lower income folks aren't a drag, a detriment to the application. So as long as they're not, if they're holding large amounts of debt or have had a foreclosure recently, things like that, they can pull down an application. But normally, if you don't add much and don't take away much, that's fine. They just kind of, disregard you a little bit in terms of the numbers, right? So in the end of the day, qualifying for a mortgage is a numbers game, and they're just running the numbers and seeing if you hit the ratios that they need you to. So yeah, I'm sorry about that experience. I do think we can connect you to people who would take you more seriously. And again, if they actually understand the product, will understand the best role for somebody who may have some debts, whether or not they should be on title or whether or not they do actually add or take away from the mortgage application. So yeah, happy to connect with you on that. And then happy, I don't know where you're at, but if you're in Metro Vancouver or, please do reach out about the questions we can talk about in advance, and again, of course, the housing choices, things of that nature. Did that answer your question? Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we'll be doing more follow-up outside of this. So I appreciate that. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for being here. I know there's been a lot of information already today, so I understand if it's enough. You don't need to ask more questions. But if anyone else has any questions they want to throw into the chat or raise their hand or unmute themselves, feel free. Otherwise, I'll go back into the kind of closing part of the presentation, and then Brian, David, and I will stick around at the end where we can answer more questions. If folks want to ask David specifically about his experience, selling part of his property to a friend, that's always an interesting conversation. So any other questions at this moment? Okay. So just to close up, there's a lot of stuff that our folks do at Coho because every partnership is unique, every property is unique, and so we're really trying to find the outside the box thinking that fits everybody. So we've worked with the sale of shares and homes in Vancouver, Victoria, and Gabriola, purchasing multi-home suites for families, for friends, for sibling groups, even for strangers that we've set up through the matchmaking, purchasing properties with more than one home on the property, or collective housing like we saw from Christopher and Noriko. Horseshoe Bay Cottages is a really interesting project, which has 8 small homes on 2 lots. That was bought for a larger kind of co-ownership community structure. We even just help folks buy multiple units in one condo building and then share some of their resources like a rooftop garden. And then we work in sales of co-housing units, co-op using undivided interest units. So there's a lot of pathways for us. And then, of course, Brian, David, and myself also work in traditional real estate as well. So feel free to reach out to us, talk about your situation, to find out what works for you, whether it be traditional or whether it be co-ownership or some other out-of-the-box model. And we're happy to help you make that happen. If you are looking for a housing partner, you don't have a friend in mind, or your friend's a little unsure, you can join our matchmaking services, fill out our partner survey on the website, check out our classifieds on the website or build one for yourself to let the world know who you are. Or join one of the groups and in-person events that happen at different times throughout the province in these towns and beyond. Here's some examples of classifieds. I won't give you time to read them now, but we build just small paragraphs about you and try to connect people to you directly to put together buyer groups. We have a lot of resources on our website, our guide to co-ownership and questions for a co-ownership agreement. And what I think is actually our best resource is our YouTube channel, where we have about a dozen different presentations on a variety of these topics with particular experts in their sub-regions. So a session on building multiplexes, a session on financing, a session on family co-ownership with lawyer Richard Bell, a couple sessions with lawyers about what goes into a partnership agreement, a session specifically on selling a share in your property if you currently own or are looking for a partner. There's more conversations where we have with co-owners if you want to hear more people's experiences. And there's a lot more. There's one about collective living, one about mediation and problem solving. There's a lot more resources on the website. So I highly recommend checking out our YouTube channel. And in general, of course, reach out to us, reach out to the person in your region. And if you're not in a region listed here, reach out to Coho BC broadly, and we can kind of help you from afar. We partner up with local real estate professionals or can do consulting services to guide you, even if your property is in, other more remote parts of the province that aren't mentioned here. We do have a bunch of other events coming up. April 28th, what is real estate co-ownership and how can it work for me? Mostly the same content that was here today. So I don't think you need to come back, but if you want to send your friends or family, the video of this session will also be available after, and video of our intro session is available. So if you got a friend you want to kind of give them confidence of, oh my God, I had this great session. Noam and Brian and David really showed me how they've thought through all the pieces and we can do this safely and properly. Like, you need to learn about it. Please do send them on the video. And of course, we're happy to set up a conversation with you and your friends to answer their questions and talk about what's doable in your area. We have a East Vancouver shareable properties tour on May 2nd and an online matchmaking event on May 26th. And what I didn't list here, David, maybe you can talk about it, is the a huge amount of stuff happening right now in Victoria. David and Turtle Motion Victoria are doing kind of gatherings every week or two and tours and meetups. David, you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up for you in Victoria?
Sure. What I've started is a what's called a school community, and on the calendar, I guess just to go back a little bit, I started about 8 years ago doing this about the same time Noam did, and we kind of got sort of retired and traveling and all that, and but now I'm back in the saddle and gearing up again, and so we've got quite a good group forming in Victoria, and so every second Saturday we get together for a meet and greet at the Quality Foods. So I don't know if we've got anybody on the call here from Victoria or not, but the Quality Foods has a couple rooms upstairs in just above their deli, and so we get together for a meet and greet, and then do a property tour starting at about 1:30 to 3. And the idea is to look at a few homes, perhaps that would make a good shareable home, and people could partner up on. We've also got every Wednesday or Thursday, every second Wednesday or Thursday, kind of a get together that just like Noam's talking about here tonight, is doing tonight. So we're expanding our presence again in the Victoria area and assembling a lot more people. So we're actually launching a matchmaking program. And so that'll be coming out in the next week or 2 weeks as well. So it'll be easier to find a match, essentially. So we're all excited. And my wife and I, Judy, and we've got another gal helping us with the program. And yeah, I found a new passion. I found my passion again, Noam. So it's been fun. It's exciting getting up every morning. And my goal really is to help people find affordable housing. And it's just, Victoria, Vancouver is just crazy, ridiculous prices. And but if two parties or two couples or even three couples, I'm running across places with 3 kitchens lately. If everybody can cooperate and pitch in and throw their resources together and their income together, it's possible to get in the market, start building equity, yeah, don't put it off. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like we're building the field of dreams, Noam. Build it and they will come. So that's kind of what's happening in Victoria.
Fantastic. There's a question here. What date and time is the next Quality Foods meetup?
Let me see. It is on February 14th. So it's 11:30, and it's upstairs, Quality Foods in View Royal, next to the Victoria General Hospital. And then the tour starts at 1:30. We're going to see a couple brand new homes that they're building in Royal Bay that week. So brand new home, 1.275 on that particular unit. So it's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath home plus a 1-bedroom, 1-bath suite. So yeah, be exciting. And they've got treats as well. So first 50 people that show up get a $10 Starbucks card, and then they've got some other giveaways. So they're friends of mine in the real estate business, and they're promoting their new homes with legal suites. So it should be fun.
Fantastic. Thank you. And everyone who is here will be added to the newsletter, and the next newsletter coming out will be focused on what's happening in Victoria. So if you missed that, you can get the information there. There's one question that was asked here, which is, does Coho only operate in Canada or also the US and Europe? I mean, we certainly are focused on British Columbia and Western Canada, but we have been brought in to consult for people doing co-ownership endeavors in the US and Mexico and other places. Because at the end of the day, the decisions you make are pretty much the same thing. You'll then want to take that to a local lawyer to put it in local legal language. But we certainly can help do consulting on that front. And yeah, I've been helping realtors across the US and other places to kind of figure out how to navigate this piece of the market as well. So feel free to reach out from wherever, but we are really focused on BC. So that's our presentation today. Thank you everybody for coming. Again, here's our information. You can reach out to us to talk about your region. You'll get an email with this as well, following up tomorrow with a copy of the video from the presentation. And we hope to help you and your friends find the right home, the right community setup, the right social structure and financial structure to succeed and have amazing housing. So thank you all for being here today, and we will hopefully see you soon.
Good job, Noam.